Welcome to Effort Talks. With me is Ashank Desai, who's an entrepreneur par excellence. Today, we will discuss the fascinating story of India's NASSCOM. Welcome, Ashank.
Thanks, Atul. Thanks to be here with you, as always.
Excellent, excellent. Um, let's talk about what is NASSCOM. So, the full form of NASSCOM is National Association of Software and Services Companies. NASSCOM is the acronym. It was born in 1988, a little more than 19 months before the Berlin Wall fell on 9 November 1989. And we know what happened then. 2 years later, the Soviet Union collapsed. In contrast, NASSCOM went on a rocket ride, up, and away. And Ashank Desai was one of its founders. He is a past chairman. He had a ringside view. In fact, he was one of the people who made this rocket. So today we are with an entrepreneur who's created a fantastic software company or many software companies. He has created public policy schools and institutions both in IIT Bombay and in IIM Ahmedabad, his two alma maters, and someone who was part of the team who made NASSCOM such a big deal. Welcome, Ashank, again, and let's get cracking with the story of the Indian IT industry even before NASSCOM began. What was going on?
So, NASSCOM started at those interesting times, as you said, Berlin Wall, Russia, and maybe just later that was the whole liberalization of Indian economy too, which played
Yes,
a
it happens. It happens the same year Soviet Union collapsed, actually. There was a balance of payments crisis, and this happens earlier in the year in 1991. Those of us who are young enough remember those days. By the end of the year, Soviet Union is no more, and in 1991, the Narasimha Rao government, with Manmohan Singh as finance minister, take away some of the license permit quota Raj. And
yes.
of course, the Indian economy finally grows, and no longer can people say that we grow by the Hindu rate of growth. Actually, it was the socialist rate of growth, not the Hindu rate of growth.
Absolutely.
But over to you, Ashank. Heady times, and you were a part of it. You are one of the people who helped grow India. So let's hear from you. What was going on before NASSCOM?
Yeah, so I always say that I have lived a dream of IT industry, dream of seeing IT industry less than $50 million to becoming $250 billion, which is like, as you would guess, 5,000 times growth in a generation in dollar terms. I think it may be another 2x if you put rupee terms. But the point I'm making is the dream that I lived is what I will describe, and NASSCOM is part of that story. So go back to 1970s and late 70s, early 80s. The whole IT industry, as we call it now, is full of large hardware players. The hardware players who were making large mainframes, mini computers, and they used to develop what is called now as software and software services, but they bundle with hardware. And then there was some interesting thing happened in US where IBM was told uh, in some legal battle that they have to separately charge for hardware and software and not as a combined one. And that opened up software industry actually.
And that led to the rise of Microsoft and Bill Gates.
Yeah, later to Microsoft and Bill Gates and many other things that all we know. So some of us started in late 70s and early 80s software companies, and Mastech is one of that company. We, with my colleagues, four of us, were the founders. But it was such a small company and such a small industry that we were struggling to grow. We were struggling to show profits. And By 86, you will be surprised that our whole revenue was just uh, 50 lakhs, or if I go by present dollar rate, it may be less than $10,000, and we were rated as top 5 or 6 companies in India. Such was the size. The point I'm making is we were all struggling.
Yeah.
Yet there was this feeling that we need to look at global markets, not be constrained by Indian markets, because there was a feeling that because of Indian entrepreneurship, because of Indian talent, which is very good in maths and science, because of English language, and because of our cost advantage, India has an opportunity to look at global software services market. And then at that point of time, suddenly all of us were feeling a great feeling of looking at much larger vision. Yet we were constrained by a lot of things that were happening in India in terms of issues of movement of people, movement of money, financing our cost of marketing and sales in US, other countries. You will be surprised that when I first went to want to go abroad, I wanted a foreign exchange, and then I had to apply and wait and all those things. And then somebody asked me from RBI, why do you want foreign exchange? He says, you are not doing any exports. You are not earning anything. I said, sir, to earn only, I have to go there. So those were the times. Anyway, so we said we need to come together and
Yeah.
attack this whole problem of A, the internal controls, B, the image of India and marketing issues that we had. Everyone thought India is software. Come on, you only have snakes and elephants on moving on the roads. That was the image. So we need to change so many things, and we could not have done it unless we come together. So this
Mhm.
dialogue about coming together as one association started happening sometime in 83, 84, 85, that period, There were talks in Mumbai, where I'm based. There were talks going on in Bangalore, which was also upcoming that time. Then there were people going abroad, and some of them were talking in some Indian, delegations used to go there to promote software. So there was some discussion there among Indian leaders. So there are various stories there. But the whole thing got kind of convoluted into a big movement sometime in 1987. So some of us came together, and one Mr. Harish Mehta, who is also one of the founders, uh, took some.
He's written a book, if I remember correctly. He's written a book on
Yes,
the
yeah,
founding of NASSCOM, and
yeah,
he's a
yeah,
friend of yours, as I understand.
yeah. He's a good friend of mine for many decades, and he has written a very interesting book which is doing well. And uh, so he invited all of us. He says, "Why don't we start working on this whole issue?" However, there was a problem there. The problem was there was already an association of hardware companies called MATE. And as I told you, hardware was given and software was given almost free by hardware companies. Now we can do it other way. But that time hardware was main business. So they were large association and we were a small part of that association. So we said, look guys, this will not going to work. We are not about domestic market. We don't want to sell anything much in domestic. We want to have global vision. And you have your own market in India. You want to sell hardware. Please do it. You can't support us. But they didn't agree. We had a chairman that time called Mera, and he tried to come and convince us, and so on and so forth. So many things happened. But we decided to move ahead. And we met in Delhi sometime in 87, and that was the inflection point where 30, 40, 50 of our software companies all met together. Mastech was there, Infosys was there, and then there were other software companies who were also present there. There was a TCS, which was, of course, largest firm even then. So all of us were there, and we started, we must do a separate association. The chairman of MATE came that time, he convinced us, still said, don't do it, we can go together. But we were clear, and that was the foundation. So that meeting then was the foundation point of NASSCOM. I was there, Harish Mehta was there, then there were other colleagues, particularly two founder members who were later felicitated by Prime Minister. Four of us as founders of NASSCOM. One
Who were
Mr.
the other two?
Yeah, one Mr. KV Ramani, who was running a software company called Future Software, and one Mr. Saurabh Srivastav, who was, of course, in Tata Burrows that time, or maybe it was Tata Unisys that time, I don't know exactly, but he was working in one of these Tata software companies. And there was, of course, people like Nandan Nilekani who were also very keen to take part. He was there, and I think Mr. Narayan Murthy was also there in that meeting. I'm not 100% sure, but he, of course, helped us greatly later. So all of us were there, and some of us said, now we should write a constitution. And we were wondering how to write constitution. We were not experts. So we looked at many other associations, and we six, seven, eight of us were signatories. I was one of those privileged ones whose name comes first because of my A. A. There was nobody above me in terms of alphabetically. So anyway, we created a constitution with values, with the idea that we will do something very, very professional. We had decided terms of chairmanship, we had decided how we'll get elections, we will decided what is the things that we should put boundaries on our association, and so on and so forth. We thought about it because we were all first generation entrepreneurs, mostly, most of us. As you know, Infosys, Mastech, these are all early founders of IT industry. And then we had, of course, people from larger companies like TCS and Tata Burrows and so on. So we wrote that constitution, but we did not have any idea of doing elections. So we wanted somebody who could lead that for the few years before elections happened. And we invited one Mr. Prem Shivdasani, who was actually a CEO and well-respected person in hardware industry that time, and he had retired and started something of his own. But real elections happened, and then Harish Mehta became first chairman. So that is the story of beginning of NASSCOM.
So it is a story wherein a few people feel a need, come together, and you break away from an early association that involves hardware. So it's almost like the breaking away, although not so dramatic, of any church from the big Catholic Church. You became the Protestants and therefore succeeded, I suppose. Uh, but walk me through the conception stage. Who was the person who first conceived of NASSCOM? Because we now know how it began, but was it you? How did you get the idea that it had to be service, not just software? Because it could very easily just have been National Association of Software. So tell us a little bit more about the early founding, the process of founding NASSCOM.
Yeah, as I said, this founding was a kind of process where many people got involved. And then that Delhi event where many people came, and some of them decided to move this ahead. And as I said, four of us who were later felicitated were main people who spent a lot of time to making it happen. But having said that, I would not say we were the only four people. As I said, there were people from IT industry like Mr. Nandan Nilekani in Infosys. Then there were people from TCS and other persons who were all involved. So I don't think it is some one person who could say that I was a founder of NASSCOM. It was a team effort. At the same time, there were some people who took more interest and spent their time, money, and efforts moving forward. And that's where this constitution and name came. That name came out of this group discussion of 10, 8, 9, 10 of us. who have signed that constitution.
So that brings me on to another question, which is that Indians are famously fractious. You look at any battle, Battle of Panipat. First, the Marathas piss off everybody else, including the Jats who walk off and don't fight with them. And then, of course, all the different Maratha Sardars have their own rivalries. And that is the story of Indian history. So, how did the famously fractious Indians come together and literally create a team of rivals?
Absolutely. You have some brilliant question there. And that's really the foundation of Mastec. Sorry, NASSCOM. We were all competing. We were very small. We were going to US and UK and competing against same customers. But there was a streak of professionalism, streak of ethics, honesty, larger vision. Those were the values of these first generation entrepreneurs like me and many others. And that is the reason we felt that we could trust each other when we work together to make industry larger. So the word competition was later coined by some American author and so on. This was that. This was like competing outside the office of NASSCOM. But when we come inside, we don't push our companies. We don't talk about our companies. We just see how we can make happen. And that was one of the reasons, apart from few others, which we'll talk about, to make NASSCOM successful. You see, there are many associations today which get split.
Yeah.
Suddenly they start and then say, oh, no, no, my interests are not being served, or I want my company to get some, and so on and so forth. And India, as you know, that crab story that people try to bring everyone down and all those things are there. Here,
No, no,
what
it's all so true, because you go to the Indian embassy and the defense attaché will tell you that we are the Shudra and the Indian Foreign Service officer is the Brahmin and I'm a nobody. And then you meet the RAW guy and he'll say, oh, I am the Shudra and I never get to do anything important and I don't get to do my work. And then the IFS person will tell you that these defense guys and RAW guys, they know nothing. We know everything. So this is not just within castes, it is between services, it's between companies. It's a feature of our culture. You're right, that crab metaphor is so true, but you overcame it. So
yeah.
that's super rare.
In fact, today, even today, people come and ask some of us to speak how this NASSCOM happened, because they see in our associations we have not been able to bring this kind of alignment, this kind of cooperation, and ego busting policies. So that's one of the things that happened. We were lucky in a way, you can say, but I think we were about new generation of that post what would I say, post liberalization entrepreneurs.
Post
We were,
1991.
yeah, we were looking at the world with a different lenses. We were not past. We had abandoned the past, and that is what is the story of NASSCOM. Really, we abandoned the past and did many things that an association should not be doing in a way, or industry should not be doing. I'll
So
talk
you
about
had, so you had a fresh vision for the future. Let's put it that way.
absolutely.
Now, so that's one thing that helped you succeed. What were the other things? You alluded to them. Outline them for us.
So out of that association of not competing when we are in NASSCOM, created a next level of great bond and trust among some of us early founder members, that I described. And we even today meet. Now it is almost 37 years, as you know. We still meet today along with our families, talk about ourselves, industry, and past, and many other things, and see that we still work together. So it was not only about industry and formal relationship, it went beyond that. So that's one point. Even today, if you look at NASSCOM, and there are many new people who have come after us. It has become all young people have come. They have become chairman. But we every year go out along with family and past chairman and existing council, along with family, enjoy, sing, dance, and discuss also everything, and come back saying, "Oh, we are all together." So that is one culture, the team culture propagated further on. That's one. Number two is about what I would call professionalism, or what I would call an attitude of a liberal economy paradigm, if I may call it. It was about free markets. It is about merit is the real arbiter of ultimately what happens. It is about seeing that we do not try to cut corners. So this liberal attitude and professionalism is the second part, which was there. Because if that was not there, we would have resisted many changes that we wanted to do, or government wanted to help us. We all said we need to trust each other and we should find government as a partner. So this liberal professional attitude meant that we don't suspect government. We help government to perform better to help us, and that's where my my motivation to start public policy school is out of that. I have
Understood.
seen how industry can influence government and professional government bureaucrats to make changes happen. If you educate them, if you tell them policy options, and if you have right people there, you can
Yeah.
make the difference. So we
Understood.
closely work with government out of that attitude of liberalization. The third one was, of course, realizing that we need to change the Indian way of doing business. We have to be focused on highest quality, highest governance of our companies, and our customers, we realized, were not necessarily not they were not from India. They were from all over the world. Large corporations, they looked at professional partners, because imagine doing software at a distance. You need to trust people, and we did many things to make that trust happen. So that is another part. And last and not the least was we were innovative in terms of finding out, you know, as a group, and hence NASSCOM innovated many things. We in industry innovated many things, but this is not a story of industry. This is a story of NASSCOM. So I will say that NASSCOM also was innovative.
Un- Understood. So you are describing features that are almost universally applicable. I could apply these features to Buddhism. Go
Sure.
back, the reasons for success, culture, teamwork, liberal attitude, openness, professionalism. And in a way, you could say this goes back right to the Nagar Seth tradition of ancient India, or for that matter, the cities of Europe that succeeded, wherein the notables, les notables, got together and had a vision for the future, a long-term vision for the future. Uh, and that is, fascinating because it cuts across time, it cuts across space. But as we know, every story has challenges. And what I want you to inform everybody is about those early challenges, because people forget today how it was a radically different time. India was a socialist country. Indira Gandhi had nationalized all the banks. There were capital controls. You couldn't leave the country without actually permission from someone to carry a very limited amount of dollars. You had to pay duties even to import computers to do your work. So the story has many, many, many layers like an onion. And I'm not saying peel all of them, because then we'll be here till tomorrow. But give us some color as to how hard it was and how much you had to fight the odds to create what you have today.
Okay, great. Again, a great question, because that is what made future of NASSCOM and IT industry, and that's what NASSCOM made happen. People in this generation may not realize the value of that because they are living in a different world. We were still living in a different world. It used to have 100% duty on software import, Atul. So if you want to, uh, presently we are talking of 100% duties, but the point I'm making is,
We are back to the future.
but but the point was, it was unaffordable for Indian industry to import any software, best of the software. Number two, it was very difficult to buy hardware in India because IBM was told to go out, as you know, during his earlier regime, and multinationals were not best of the people, the best of the companies who were applauded by government. So we had an
No, I mean,
environment.
look, the Janata Party government, why just mention Indira Gandhi? The Janata Party government kicked even Coca-Cola out. It
Yeah,
was the zeitgeist. Everyone was protectionist. The
yeah.
Janata Party was protectionist. The Congress was protectionist. And of course, we had the communists. How can we forget them?
Yeah, of course. So hardware was very difficult to be imported. So we need to change. Otherwise, how are we going to do best of the software unless we have best of the hardware in the country? Yeah, they were not there. We had to get it from outside. Third, we were so constrained in terms of foreign exchange, and we were trying to solve that problem in a way by building industry. But as I said, I was asked by some RBI official, why are you going out, what foreign exchange when you are not building foreign exchange? But we had to start somewhere. So we had to liberalize this whole movement of people and movement of supporting exports to liberalizing some of the exports there. Then the challenge was, of course, much larger in terms of our image and our reach to the foreign world. Because of these issues that we were small, we had constraints of moving around, we had constraints of money, we could not promote ourselves to be the major players. Everybody would have a bad image about India. So we had that as another challenge, which NASSCOM had to address. And then as times move ahead, everyone said, yeah, you are doing good software, we understand, you are very bright people, but where is the quality of your software? You still have to improve your quality. You are not at the level that we are, Americans would say. So that was another challenge. I'll tell about how we solved each one of them. I'll come to very quickly. I'm first describing challenge. Yeah. And the last one was about the cost of doing. They said, fine, you can't come to US and do software for us because that is going to be as costly, because then I have to pay for your coming there, I have to pay you allowances. Where is the advantage of cost? Show me a big advantage of cost. So the challenge was, we were not geared because telecommunication was not there. I remember there was one line, 64 kb, Atul, going between Texas Instrument, Bangalore to America, and we said, wow, we now have a telecommunication connection. Now I don't know how many gigabyte connections we have. I have lost account. But 64 kb was the largest ever telecom line between America and India. so there was a problem of telecommunication.
Ashank, let me stop you. So let me stop you. Ranveer Trehan, who worked on the ARPANET, he is a mentor and a dear friend, and he's in his 80s. And he said, you cannot imagine during the early days, how limited data would go around. It's a totally different universe, not just a world. I mean, the era of optical fibers and whatnot has completely transformed telecommunications.
Yeah. So all these problems meant that all this dream of being large software exporter from India, earning foreign exchange, was just a pipe dream at one level. The last one was, of course, talent. We used to still wonder. I remember one meeting of NASSCOM, we were saying, we have some 100 project managers in the country. What is software export we are talking? Anyway, So let me tell you how we address these challenges. That's where the government comes. That's where the our association comes as a one industry and not competing with our own interest. The first thing we did was we said 0% duty on software. I told you 100%. We said 0% duty. I want all the software in India to come with no duty. Other industry guys said, you guys are crazy. You guys don't know how to run business. We need a protection in the country. We are just growing. We have just liberalized. What nonsense you are talking? We said, no. We want best of the software and hardware to come in the country. We will build on that, and so flood software in, flood software out. That was our message to the government. And fortunately, Mr. Manmohan Singh was a finance minister that time. So he heard us, and he kind of agreed reluctantly. He says, see, guy, if these guys, young guys, so-called professionals want to do something, anyway, it won't do much harm to us. We are a very small industry. So I think he agreed. And we had a good bureaucrat that time. I must tell you that story, that we were lucky to have bureaucrats in the industry, in Department of Electronics and government, who saw that opportunity, and they were also like entrepreneurial. And one name comes to our mind is Mr. N. Victor. His name is to be written also in a big way in history of IT industry. In fact, he was also felicitated by Prime Minister along with us as a we were felicitated as founder, and he was also one of the supporters. So we worked with him very closely. Then we went and told him, sir,
What was his
and
name?
Vittal, and
What was his
Vittal,
name?
and
What was his
and
name?
for Norway, and Vittal, Vittal. He was a part of Gujarat government bureaucracy, and like all Gujaratis, he was very entrepreneurial. We just lost him, unfortunately, just few months back. Yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
dear.
he said, okay, I will support
Lost.
you. So he said, what all you want? We also said we had very great difficulty of doing software export in export processing zones. They were what is called as SEZs. There was so much of bureaucracy, so much of control. We said software should not be done in one place. Software can be done anywhere. I can sit at home and build software, which I'm doing now, thanks to COVID. But even that time, we were telling them software has to have a free development facility. And then we came with an idea of Software Technology Park, STP. That innovation happened because NASSCOM said, we don't want SEZs alone. Allow us to build software anywhere so that customs officials, hardware import, putting them behind big walls is not required. We can just get a connection, and so that is second thing we asked for government, and Mr. Vittal also agreed. But he went and told government, these guys want many things. They will do 400 million export in next 2 years. He just promised government and prime minister and the finance minister, and we hear about it in the press. We went, sir. He says, you want all the facilities, right? You better deliver. So he was like businessman.
He was an
So
entrepreneur. He was a good Gujarati. He was like you, Ashank. He was a good Gujarati.
so he said, I have committed already that you will do $400 million. We were just $100 million. So he said, sir, this is difficult. But the point I'm making is we did very close to that number in any case because we grew very fast. So he was asking and giving us something at the same time he was demanding, which was good. Then we went and told him, sir, we can't do telecommunication software in India unless we have a big telecom pipe. And all the telecom in India was public utilities, as you know. There was VSNL, there was MTNL, There is now BSNL. Now they were not geared to provide us the kind of fast movement, fast expansion, and we used to say we want bijli and bandwidth both together, and that forced government to privatize the telecom. I must tell you this, Atul. In the history of India, when I started Mastek, it used to take 12 years to get telephone connection in Mumbai. 12 years.
Wow.
That handset and you ring rotating.
Yeah, with the round.
You must have seen it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. I grew up seeing it at my grandfather's place. It
yeah.
was a
So
black,
we,
it would be a black telephone, and you dialed it one, and if it was in color, that was a fancy set.
yeah. So, so that in fact in Mastek we did not have any phone first 5 years. Can you believe we were doing business by doing from calls from telephone booths? That was the way we were doing business. Then we had hired somebody to.
They used to be called they used to be called STD ISD booths. I
I
remember
know.
them.
So the point I'm making is, we said we must liberalize and have private sector coming in. And now you get your mobile phone in 10 seconds, right? You just go and order it. This revolution happened not by telecom industry. We asked for it, IT industry.
Wow.
So we are actually the initiator of this telecom revolution that happened in India. We did it for us, our industry, obviously, but the whole country benefited out of it because telecom industry was very small. They were not big, and fortunately, this Mr. Vittal also went and became telecom secretary. He agreed. So that is second challenge. Third challenge that I solved. I told you about import duty. I told you about difficulty in doing software in software zones. We changed the policy. We changed the telecom policy. Now comes the next point. We wanted that we need large number of talent, and we were not having computer science graduates as we have now. Now almost 40% of or 50% of computer graduates are computer science. In fact, it is other way now that we are not producing other engineers, which is not good.
Yeah. But I still hear complaints from people in industry that you have to train these people
Yeah,
yourself.
yeah. That
Because what happens is they come out of university knowing very little practical stuff, and then it takes you a year sometimes, or 18 months to train them to work
yes,
for you.
that of course is the case. Because we are growing faster than the education can produce the quality people. So that's a separate discussion. So we came with what is called as MCA, Management of Computer Applications, as a new degree. And we pushed it through government. And we told government also, please liberalize the education. India used to produce only 100,000 engineers or less than that in 1990s. That was just not enough for us.
Wow.
We said, unless you allow large universities to come themselves, only IITs and regional engineering colleges can't produce number of engineers that we need. And we force government also to liberalize the education in a way. Our pressure for talent helped liberalization in education too. And today we produce almost 1.5 million engineers. We are the largest engineers producers in the world today, probably, or number one, number two. Now that revolution happened again because we wanted people. We were growing so fast and we were not getting people. So that is forced policy intervention
So
we did.
two revolutions because so two revolutions because of So, two revolutions because of you, knock on effects. Number one was the pressure to improve telecoms, and number two, the pressure to liberalize education and produce enough computer science graduates, really, or computer science people to work in the industry.
AI and what will happen to the whole world. But one thing everyone says, India has the largest AI talent. Let us go to India. They know how to make things happen. How is it happening? That's happening because we are all geared to produce raw talent, and we are geared to train them when they come in our company. So all that supply chain, as you would call it, of people has been professionalized and scaled up. So that is another challenge which we got solved through this. The next one, the image issue. There was a World Bank that time who came and said, "Oh, you guys are software industry. We should we should work on something to produce a global report on what kind of software you should do." So we again went to government and tell government, please support us. We want this report to be done, because if it is from World Bank, everybody will take notice, and they will then think of India as a good place. Okay. So that is another thing that we did again. Government supported us, but that report is still, of course, it was at 30 years ago. What it says now is looks very, very small, but that's okay. That was a foundation that created image, and we used to tout that report in America. Look what World Bank is saying. So they say, "Oh, okay, looks like you guys are good." So that is another thing. The last one, of course, was something that NASSCOM did itself. It was not something that was a focus on quality. In 95, 96, there is what is called as CII, CMM, CMM model for evaluating software development process. And it has a level 1 to level 5. It is a Carnegie Mellon University model. And we were considered as not a very high quality country. And then there was what is called as ISO 9001. It was a global standard for process of software. We as an NASSCOM pushed very hard industry. We brought experts from all over the world, forced people to train. And Atul, by 99, 2000, 80, 90% of CII level 5 companies were in India. So we were number one in software process. And by the way, I must tell you one story here, which is my company specific. You see that Carnegie Mellon model has a model for software development and also for people development. And they have called CMM for software development and PCMM for people development. And we had applied for it, and we were assessed by people from outside India. They came from America. And when they announce it, they invite top management also along with the employees. And they said, "I have to make one announcement which will make you very proud." So we said, "Maybe we have got the PCMM." He said, "No, not only you have got PCMM, you are the first private sector PCMM company in the world." He said, "There are only two companies who have got this PCMM. One is Navy or military establishment in US, and then there is another one, which is again a government. You are first private sector." So
that was a huge achievement.
yeah,
Huge achievement.
in 1999 or 97, I think, I don't remember now. The point I'm making is there was whole revolution of focus on quality and people. Now all that happened because of NASSCOM, and that's the way we handle the challenges. I hope my long answer answered your question, how we address the challenges, working together, working with government, working with the people outside India, and then promoting industry. It's a lovely story. It is a dream, as I said, we lived.
So tell us about the inflection points. We know about the challenges, but surely there must have been inflection points when you made a huge quantum leap. The Greeks have a fantastic conception of time, kairos, which is chronological. Sorry, chronos, which is chronological, and kairos, wherein you can bend the arc of time. Like you look at, all right, you work very hard and over time, but then there comes the Olympics, and then if you put in your best, you win Olympic gold or an Olympic medal. So what were the inflection points for NASSCOM and the industry?
Yeah. So 2, 3 things happened. The first one was this inflection point about rated high globally in quality. So that was one important inflection point, because people have said now, wow, we are now rely on India. The second inflection point which happened parallelly was developing software offshore. Remember, software was not done outside, far away from the cabin of CIO in America or UK. They wanted to see programmers outside their cabin, and the process was you tell them what to do, then change it. You see, software development process is very complicated and muddy, and a lot of surprises happen. You must have heard some stories of software going completely failure, and all those things have happened. But that is because the process is still.
I've heard a few stories. Yes, some from some. I can think one or two even from you.
They say that you tell them to develop jula or a swing, but by the time you tell them what to do, they convert it into their own word, then they convert it to their architecture, and what you get is a noose to hang somebody. So that's the kind of story. So anyway, so those are okay. So, but the point I'm making is we perfected this whole by 1995, 96, 97. We perfected this art of doing software 5,000 miles away because telecom was now happening, and we could develop software at a distance.
Yes, please crack on.
And that was an innovation and one of the inflection points. Because remember, when COVID came, we could not use our offices. We sent all the people at home, and they were working at home and still producing same software because we knew how to do it at a distance. You see, it was not a challenge for us. So whole world depended on India to deliver software. When COVID was there and offices were closed, people could not travel, no problems. We can do it anywhere. So this anywhere software development is second inflection point. It happened in late 90s, around that time, because some of these changes that NASSCOM made happen. So that was the third inflection point was, of course, Y2K for the industry again, where NASSCOM, of course, took a role of propagating it globally and so on. And that is another point where suddenly the doors were open for Indian industry to work with large corporates, Fortune 500 companies. The another one was, there is whole industry was only built on software development, as we call it. But there was a next round of innovations and markets opened up for Indian industry, what we called as business process management. You see, people started saying, okay, you can do software, then you can do our call centers, you can run our finance department, you can run our HR departments. So this whole flood started coming, and a new industry got developed, and NASSCOM was, of course, geared to support that industry.
Got it. So there was a massive multiplier effect, what you're saying. It just didn't lead to, okay, software coming in, but lots of other stuff coming in as a result.
So those were some of the inflection points which happened in the IT industry, but NASSCOM was an observer and supporter, and we as a group were kind of. See, because every industry, new market happens, there are new challenges. You see, when this BPM industry happened, they had their own challenges. Who was solving it? NASSCOM. Okay. The next inflection point, which has now happened over last 7-8 years, is large American and British and global corporates starting what is called a GCC, Global Competency Centers. And they are in Bangalore, they are in Mumbai, they are in Hyderabad and Delhi and so on. Now that is another flood which is coming now, new inflection. Now to support these people, there are a lot of still issues that they face. So we are there to support. Okay. Then there is another inflection point was.
Just tell our viewers and listeners a little bit about global capability centers, because they are the new thing, and a lot of people have questions about what you call the GCC. This is not the Gulf Cooperation Council. For those of you who listen to Fair Observer and watch Fair Observer and read Fair Observer for geopolitics. This is a different GCC.
So that story goes sometime back again where NASSCOM played a stellar role. You see, 80s, late 80s, 90s, even early 2000s, most of the software was done by Indian companies for developed world. But we said we are not about only Indian companies. We are about multinational software services company coming to India. Okay, we didn't see them as a competition. Today in associations, they say, oh, they are from outside. They will come and finish us. NASSCOM again took that view that we are together. We are not competing, but we are partners.
So an open, going back to what you called earlier, the open liberal culture, open liberal professional culture of NASSCOM, right from day one.
Yeah. So we supported these Microsofts, SAPs, Accentures who all came to India because now they realized they better be in India. So that was a beginning. They were not called GCC that time. But that was the software companies coming to India. But now what is happening is not only...
I'm also told GE came in a big way in the early days. Is that true? Okay.
Yes, GE also was another inflection point in a way. You had asked for some inflection point. Jack Welch came sometime in, I think, late 90s, if I'm right. And he said, oh, wow, India is such a great country with software development. I will start my own center and I will give business to a lot of Indian companies. And there many Indian companies benefited. And then they started their own joint venture called for BPO or BPM business called Gempler. So anyway, so they also were one of the people, but they were very early. Others didn't take notice of that too much. Mostly the software was done by Indian companies and multinational software companies, services companies. So many people came in those early days. But now what is happening is our customers and our large corporations, whether they are making cars, they want to do research using IT and design cars in India. There is a chemical industry, people who come and invent new chemicals. They want to develop their whole business to run sitting in India. Then there is an aerospace company who comes here and design parts. So they are now not only doing software, which they are doing also, but they are also running some of their R&D operations sitting in India. And most of it, as you know, R&D is driven by IT. So to that extent, they need IT people, and they also need domain expert, as we call them. They need automobile experts, they need chemical engineers, they need aerospace engineers, and so on and so forth. So the GCC is a culmination of almost doing technology for developed world sitting in India. And that's why they call Global Competency Center, GCC. And now we have 1,800 of them in India. And every quarter, I think we add some 30, 40, 50 of them. It is growing very fast.
So come again, then give an idea of the numbers. How many of them today? And
1,700.
Wow, 1,700, and growing at the rate of what, 10%, 20%?
Yeah. 50, if you say 50 per year means one is that existing 1,700 are becoming larger. On top of it, new people are coming. So today they are growing at much faster, maybe 20% or 25%, and they account for almost 1/3 of our IT output today. And 1/3 of people are employed by them. See, we have around 5.5 million. They have almost 1.8 million people today. You come to HSBC as a bank or Citibank or Boeing or whoever, they all have centers here.
So quite a few changes. And so we are looking at NASSCOM today that is radically different to the organization that began in 1988, actually on March 1st or 1st March 1988. So tell us, how is NASSCOM similar to what it was in 1988? Yes, the culture of professionalism, a sense of team, family, etc. And how is NASSCOM different? Because surely the organization must have grown. You probably have professional management. You have different interests. So tell us about both the similarities and differences.
Okay, can I go back slightly for one story that I must tell you?
Please, it's your show.
Because that story is again part of NASSCOM history. And this people working together and not worrying about their own competition issues. In the early years of NASSCOM, another challenge that I didn't describe to you was financial condition of NASSCOM. And we could not spend a lot of money. We were all small companies, having 100 people, 50 people. Now we employ millions as an industry. So there was a challenge to running NASSCOM. I remember Infosys, Mr. Narayan Murthy, who was second elected chairman, said, I will do courses for NASSCOM for all others in the industry, and whatever earning money I get, I will give it to NASSCOM. See the kind of large-heartedness we saw there. There was another story. NASSCOM was to be recognized. We had to become associated with larger bodies. So there is a body which is still there called Associo. Associo is Asia Oceanic IT Industry Association, which is association of 20 countries. And these 20 countries include Australia to Japan, and now from India to Philippines, all of them. Now we were not members there, or we were kind of not known, NASSCOM in 91. So we said we should become member of that because Japan and Australia will recognize us, and Korea and Singapore will recognize us. So chairman of that time, Mr. Hari, said, we don't have money to go there. Who will go? And there was a big event in Melbourne that time. So I said, Harish, I will go. I will spend my own money. I will spend my company's money and my own time to promote NASSCOM. So I went there and I realized there was some other small association and become their members. We said they are not our association and NASSCOM is the association. And I enrolled NASSCOM in Associo, which was a great liberator because then Asia Pacific market opened up to us, 1991 or 92.
So that is, Ashank, that is really early. You guys were really outward looking, and you weren't just looking at the US, you were looking both east and west. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that was a vision, as well as I said, some sacrifices all members made.
And necessity, in a way. You were wise enough to recognize what was the need of the hour and do what you needed to do.
Yeah. Anyway, so coming back to your question now, this story of team and all had to be told with this kind of backdrop. So you are asking me what do we look forward, right? How do we? Was your question?
There was a time when you were a small industry. NASSCOM began on 1st March 1988. NASSCOM must have been a very different beast. And today it's a huge industry. You apply 1 million people. You have global capability centers coming in. You have many more interest groups. So how is NASSCOM changed and how is it similar? What are the similarities between the NASSCOM of 1988 to the NASSCOM of 2025? And what are the differences between the NASSCOM of 1988 and the NASSCOM of 2025?
Great question. Any organization, if it has to grow, it has to make changes happen. At the same time, its core has to be kept intact. There are some things that should not be changed. They become foundation. And there are some things which needs to change. So, what is that which is not changed still? That still camaraderie of people who are competing and yet working together is still there today. Even today we all meet, even today we have that relationship, trusting each other, and NASSCOM is felicitating it. So that's one. Number two is this whole professional liberal aspect of whatever we see the world still remains. When GCCs came, some people came and complained. He says, oh, they are competing with Indian companies. In NASSCOM, we said, no, it doesn't matter. We are about India. We are not about Indian entrepreneurs alone. We are about India. So those attitude and values have not changed. However, what has changed greatly was the whole nature of the industry has changed. Now, export, of course, is big, and we need to do many new things to address that market. There is an AI, there is this whole issue of new services that are coming out of cyber security, coming out of the whole issue of GCCs running their operations here. All of them are new services, and we should be ready to support those new services, which is different than what was earlier. And AI particularly is bringing a lot of challenges in terms of number of people that we need, the quality that we need, and so on. So that's a big challenge for our exports.
So let me stop you just for a second, because I'm hearing to people like you, people who know the industry, people who understand big challenges, both technological and business. And one of my friends said that earlier you needed a number of coders, and then you checked, and then of course you came up with a product. And he said now the low-level code AI can do, and now you actually need the senior developer or the architect to look at it, correct it, make sense of it, and then produce the final product or service. But the challenge is that senior developer or senior manager had a lot of experience, made errors. Now, because of AI, the juniors are not getting that experience. You don't even need them. And the people who are at the top with the experience are becoming more and more valuable. And we are getting into this challenge that where will we get the senior developers or the senior architects with the vision to create a product and service for the future? Because very few people are getting their hands dirty and dirt under their fingernails. This is what I'm hearing. And what I'm hearing is that the paradigm is changing very dramatically, and we'll have to be very nimble and flexible to adapt. Would that argument or would that analysis or insight resonate with you? Are there legs to it?
Absolutely, Atul. The changes have been there in IT industry for all 40 years. It's not that changes didn't happen. If you remember, I used to do punch cards when I was studying at IIT to run my program.
Yes, you told me. It's there in our podcast.
Yeah. And it used to take me 1.5 days to remove bug in the program. Now you can do it in 10 microseconds. And that's why they have to be more productive, I tell them. But anyway, but this time the changes have happened at a much faster rate. And industry and NASSCOM together have to make that change themselves. So industry has to see that they train people in these new technologies, which all of us are doing. Today, most of my budget on R&D is going on training people in new AI, cyber security, building new applications, and so on and so forth. So industry is investing greatly and going out and telling customers that we can do these new applications which otherwise we had not done. Many of us are building platforms which are going to be global platforms. Many of doing are micro or mini LLMs also, by the way. Some of them will succeed, some of them may have challenges. But the point I'm saying is there is this whole change in terms of priority in Indian IT industry. That's one. Number two, we are going and telling government, that's where NASSCOM again comes. Sir, now is an opportunity for India again, one more time. We are doing 250 billion, we can do 500 billion in next 6-7 years, provided we build infrastructure in the country to do AI and other research. And today, our government is again very supportive to us, and they have already rolled out some RFP for building large data centers, which will be run by private people, but they will be well funded by government. Government is investing money. Government also is investing money in using AI for domestic market. There's a lot of work happening in Niti Aayog, and many other excellent centers have been done in various IITs. So how is that happening? Because government now wants NASSCOM and IT industry to participate to use AI in the country. So it is now there is a new change which is happening in NASSCOM. That is change that you are talking is about getting focus of making happen many things in Indian domestic national market. We were more focused on exports, but now we are equally focused on Indian market and changing Indian face. As you know, UPI that happens today, you can transfer money. Even my housemaid or even my vegetable vendors doesn't want to do any cash. He says, "Sir, transfer the money." Now, how that happened? That has all happened because Indian IT leaders, like many others, like we developed the Aadhaar thanks to uh, that UDI which was formed 10, 15 years ago. Mr. Nandan Nilekani took the charge, and so on. So some of these things are also happening today, so that investments in happening in Indian usage of IT, investment in happening in Indian IT infrastructure, and that will future tomorrow's IT industry and tomorrow's NASSCOM.
All right, so lots of changes, lots of developments. Let's talk about Donald Trump, all right, because we have to. It's a new era. Protectionism is back in the air. And you just mentioned how in your DNA, NASSCOM opposes protectionism. You are open to competition. You're open to collaboration. You see that as a challenge. And, uh, and we are now living in a world where Donald Trump has unleashed tariffs on all or nearly all trading partners. British Prime Minister Sir Keir Starmer, and do a lot of business in the UK, so you know Britain really well. So Keir Starmer has declared the world as we know it is gone. So what lies in store for NASSCOM in this brave new world?
Okay, that's a good question. With so many things happening, change every day, to hazard a guess of what will happen is a really a tricky question. You could be proved completely wrong or completely right, not necessarily because of you are intelligent, but because somebody else has done something. You know,
Yeah, but as an organization, you still have to plan and make a guess. It's like sailing. If the weather is rough, the waves are choppy, the winds are strong, but you still have to make a decision. Ashank.
of course. Now there are two sides to that whole thing. One is about the kind of work that Indian IT industry does is something which is not falling in the goods area. To answer very specifically what is happening, it is about services. And fortunately, services trade has always been without any duties, both ways. India imports so many services, financial services, legal services, intellectual property, so on and so forth, and many other things. And we, of course, do IT services and many other things. And both of them are intangible goods and not physical goods. So they cannot be located where they can be, the tariff can be put on them. They are not coming at some seashore or airport. So A, it is difficult. B, anyway, it is a duty-free kind of trade which is happening globally. So as such, we are very hopeful that IT industry or services industry will have a lesser direct impact. So that's point one. Having said that, we have to be aware that some of these trade and tariffs will impact our physical goods industry, many others, and it will also impact our customers in those countries. Today, there is a fear of recession in US and UK. Why? The stock market is falling. Why? Because there is a fear that these policies will trigger a problem for our customers. So NASSCOM and IT industry has to see that they offer the services that help them to control some of these costs. And that's where we are very well geared, doing a lot of work offshore, doing a lot of work projects which will help them to produce services at a lower cost or an innovative way. So we actually can be, in a way, the positive side of this is that we can be one of the potential partners for some of them to help them address this crisis, is the way I look at it. So on one hand, there will be negative impact, of course, because of our customers facing recessions. But I feel that it will also open up opportunities for new applications and doing a lot of work in India.
So, on the whole, you're very, very, very positive about what is going on. By the way, I apologize. Announcements have begun in India's national capital in Delhi. There's some political rally or something, and someone's grabbed a mic, a loudspeaker, and is checking the mic. So apologies for the background noise, Ashank, but we are coming to the close of our interview anyway. So my final thoughts are, you're a senior statesman. You are one of the titans of industry. If you could advise current technology leaders in India and NASSCOM, what are the 3 points or the three-point advice you would give, since you work so much in the UK? Let's end on a 3-point Oxford / Cambridge debating formula.
Yeah, that always works. I use them also in my speeches. So. Okay. The 3-point is very simple. Number one, build future by building talent and educational system.
So education, number one. So you're sounding like Tony Blair. Education, education, education.
Second, I think we need to build tomorrow's organization for making change happen faster than what we are doing today.
Embrace
The
change.
speed of change has to be embraced much faster. That is second. Third thing is, the problems are getting so complex that I don't think any one party or any one entity can solve it. It is a partnership across countries, across associations, across working together in a win-win formula is much more needed now than earlier.
So collaboration.
Collaboration, embrace win-win attitude. Don't think of only yourself. Think of what we can do together is more required than earlier now. So those are the 3 points.
Brilliant. Ashank, Desai, always a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Atul. The great job that you are doing too. It has always been a pleasure.
Join the conversation at Fair Observer and subscribe to our YouTube channel.